Hello everyone. So today we're going to be working on our gargoyles, or if you're choosing to do an alternate activity, this is how to kind of draw on a slab and then cut it out. So you were going to start with a slab, which is a flat pancake of clay. Notice the thickness of it and how some of it is uneven. We are going to use rolling pins today to even those out. So with our rolling pins, we are going to use these type of wedges, and that's going to make sure that our clay only becomes the thickness of that wedge. So this is pretty similar, but I have some areas that are kind of uneven, so I'm going to sort those out today. So you have to put these two wedges on either side of your placemat. Please make sure you're working on top of a placemat or it absolutely will stick to the table and then you're going to have a really challenging time. If you need your slab to become wider, you put it like this because when you roll it, it will push this section up. If you want it to become wider, if you want it to become longer, you need to make sure it is vertical like this so that when you push it and roll it, that it becomes longer. So today I think I want a wider one. So I'm going to position those like this. Then I'm going to take my rolling pin, put it directly on top, making sure the rolling pin overlaps my slats. I'm going to push down from the middle. I like to push and wiggle. Push down from the middle and up, middle and down, just like that. I can check and make sure it is all even by putting my rolling pin at the bottom and doing a little flick. If it gets stuck anywhere, that means that you need to even it out from there. Now, say for instance you look at it and you're like, oh, there's still some bumps and some textures I don't like. Flip it over and it might be better. So anyway, now from there, you are going to use a needle tool. Remember, needle tools are sharp and pokey. Be careful with them. And you are going to draw out what the base of your design is going to look like. So this is the shape of mine. So I'm going to work on sketching that out before I cut it out. The base of your project should be about the size of, it should be no smaller than the size of your palm, but be about the size of your palm to your pinky finger, to your fingers. So about this size here. So I am going to lightly draw on top of my clay project or on top of my slab, sketching out what I want that base to look like. Notice I'm using short, sketchy lines until I have the lines and the design the way I want it to. I am not cutting my slab until after I have drawn it. If you notice, I've already made a ton of different mistakes, and if I cut this thing out without actually drawing it out first, I would be very upset. If I make a mistake, maybe I sneeze and I make a big mistake, I just have to rub it and it will all disappear, just like that. So anyway, redraw that. Now, to cut it, you have two different options. You can either use a needle tool by sticking it straight up and down into your clay, holding it straight up and down, supporting the clay, and pulling it until that clay is released from your project. You should always, when using a needle tool, hear the needle scraping against the actual fabric of the placemat. Hold your clay, support it as you cut. Remove any of those extra little bits that form on the end of the needle tool, putting them on your extra clay. The second option, instead of using a needle tool, is using a fettling knife. Remember, fettling knives have one edge that's a little bit tapered and slightly sharp. When using a fettling knife, you should not be sawing back and forth. You should put the knife down and pull. You can even rotate your placemat in order to help you continue, but there is no sawing action. No, like this. No. Pull. Remove the clay, and you're ready to go. Now, right now, if I look at the edges of my clay, I can see that there's a lot of very little sharp bits that are sticking up. Any little bits that look sharp now are going to become like blades later on after they're done being fired. So using your water cups, you're going to take 2 fingers, dip it on your little sponge, just 2 fingers. If your fingers start looking like mud, you put way too much water on it. Smooth out those edges, a little bit of water, smooth out those edges. And as soon as you're done making your base, you're going to flip it over, write your name and class code. Please only use the needle tools to write your name and class code. Do not try to write it with the edge of a fettling knife. It is not a small enough point. I highly recommend that when you do this and you write your name, that you write it in all capital letters. Capital letters tend to have more straight lines and are easier to draw using your needle tool. Write your class code, 5 and blank, and then put a circle around it, or a square, because it's easier to draw, on a piece of clay. So I'm going to put this off to the side, and then I'm going to work on forming the mouth of my project, so that pinch pot shape. So using some of my extra clay, I'm just going to break that off, and I'm going to work on forming a pinch pot. So I'm just using my hand to really push that clay together, making sure there's no air bubbles inside of it. I'm just using one hand right now. Once I have a decent shaped ball, going back and forth, and I've seen some students when they make like balls of clay that they're like, it's not making it into a pinch pot. Like, that's not going to do anything. You got to like use some muscle. Use some muscle, roll it into a ball, pinch it a little bit, look around for any cracks, smooth out those cracks. Again, it's not like, it didn't work. You got to like push the clay. Push the clay. So I'm going to push this in. I made a crack. I'll fix that in a minute. Push, push, push all the way around. I got the message. There we go. Smooth out those cracks. Smooth out those cracks. I can even use a little bit of water to smooth out those cracks. Then it is time to attach it. If I want to put this face down, remember there is air trapped inside, so I will have to cut a mouth hole open, or I can put it face up. Either way, I'm still going to have to score wet and weld. I'm deciding that I want to put it face down, so I'm going to push and wiggle. That's not going to be enough. I just to make a mark of where it's going to go. I lift it up, and I can see an indent. I have to now score the surface, so that means scratching it up. I can either use a needle tool to do this, just like that, or I can use one of these scrapey tools to scratch up my surface. Not all tables might have these, but anything that's rough like this will work. Add a little bit of water, add a little bit of water, stick it down and wiggle, and then you gotta weld it. Right now, it'll appear as though it's stuck on, but as soon as that water evaporates in 2 weeks, it will fall apart. So use one of these curved wooden tools and go around the whole edge and attach it to your project. Once you've done that, you've gone around the whole thing, you might be left with these really rough looking edges. That's when the toothbrushes come into play. Put a little bit of water on the toothbrush, run it along those edges, and it'll smooth it out very nicely. Put it down, draw out what you want your mouth to look like. When you're happy with it, you can either use a knife or a needle tool, or you can use a knife to cut it out. Remember to smooth out your rough edges with a bit of water. All right, my people, next week we'll do additional details, or if you're ready to do it now, you go for it. Make sure your name is still legible at the end.